In 1817, British aristocrats brought an unusual plant into the country. It was meant to ornament gardens. But today, this green giant leaves people with third-degree burns and can even blind them. A single specimen can release up to 50,000 seeds in a season, which is why it spreads so rapidly. More than 200 years later, neither Britain nor dozens of other European countries have managed to stop it. Giant hogweed is not a poison in the classical sense. It works differently. Inside its stems, leaves, and flowers is a clear sap containing organic compounds called furanocoumarins. In darkness, they are harmless. But step into sunlight, even on a cloudy day, and the furanocoumarins penetrate skin cells, bind to DNA, and destroy the cell's ability to defend against ultraviolet radiation. Within 24 to 48 hours, blisters appear comparable to third-degree burns. Skin peels away in layers. Even after healing, scarring remains for years, and affected areas flare up from sun exposure again and again. If the sap reaches the eyes, blindness. To understand how this plant came to be found across all of Britain, you need to go back 200 years, late 18th century. Outside Moscow, at the Gorinka estate, Count Alexei Razumovsky builds one of the largest private botanical gardens in Europe. By 1812, the catalog contains over 8,000 species. Among them, a plant from the Caucasus, Heracleum giganteum. The Gorinka garden exchanged seeds with gardens across Europe, and in 1817, a batch reached Kew Gardens in London. This is the earliest recorded appearance of hogweed in Britain. For the Victorians, the plant was a find. 5 meters tall, an umbrella of white flowers, leaves as wide as a dining table. Wealthy families planted hogweed beside lakes and ponds, precisely where every flood picks up seeds and carries them downstream. What they failed to anticipate was its reproductive power. In the Caucasus, hogweed evolved in cold conditions with poor soils, so its strategy is mass seed production. One plant releases up to 50,000 seeds a season. In the Caucasus, most die. In Britain, almost all remain viable. Each seed can wait in the soil for up to 15 years. In 1828, the first wild population was recorded in Cambridgeshire. 11 years after arrival, the plant had escaped. And the Gorinka garden? After Razumovsky's death, it fell into ruin. Today, nothing of it remains. The garden is dead. The plant is immortal. For decades, hogweed spread quietly, along rivers, wastelands, railway embankments. It grew, but few took notice. Everything changed in the 1970s. By then, hogweed had colonized riverbanks across Britain, and children discovered in it a perfect toy. The hollow stem was ideal for blowpipes and homemade telescopes. The large leaves became roofs for dens. The result? Mass burns. Dozens of children in hospitals with blisters on their faces, hands, and around their eyes. The wildlife trusts would later write, "It was then that hogweed earned its grim reputation." In 1981, Parliament added giant hogweed to Schedule 9 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act. Planting it or causing it to spread in the wild became a criminal offense. In 2014, police received additional powers to issue warnings to landowners under the Antisocial Behavior Act if hogweed on their land threatened others' health. The law has existed for over 40 years. The plant continues to win. And England received the worst of it. The Southeast, the Midlands, Yorkshire, Greater Manchester, North London, these are the highest concentration zones in the entire country. River valleys and lowland waterways became ideal corridors for spread. Seeds fall into water, and kilometers downstream, a new colony appears on the bank. Canal and River Trust, the organization maintaining thousands of kilometers of English canals and rivers, calls hogweed one of its primary enemies. When hogweed reaches 5 meters, its leaves create a complete canopy. No native plant survives in its shade. In winter, it dies back and leaves the banks bare, without roots, without protection. Streams erode the soil, banks collapse. This destroys the habitat of the water vole, a mammal that has lost over 90% of its range in England over recent decades. Hogweed doesn't just burn people, it erases the ecosystem beneath it. On the River Tees in northern England, hogweed had occupied approximately 96 kilometers of the main channel and another 30 kilometers of lower tributaries. In 2019, the Tees Rivers Trust launched Operation Giant Hogweed, a 5-year project with national lottery funding. The strategy: cover the entire catchment from source to sea. Volunteers, local councils, fishing clubs, landowners all working together. Hogweed is removed by hand and chemically, and cleared areas are replanted with native wildflowers, bulbs, and trees so the plant cannot return to bare ground. David and Roz Butler, a couple aged 78 and 76, have been going out to the banks of the Tees since 2012. 13 years in a row. Protective suit, sprayer on the back, herbicide in the tank. Roz calls hogweed the most horrible plant, but she says, going back to a patch you've cleared and seeing native flora flowering there is wonderful. Chloe Lawrence, project manager at Tees Rivers Trust, calls their dedication remarkable, but the Butlers are the exception, not the rule. England has nothing comparable to Scotland's SYSI, which coordinates work across thousands of kilometers. Here, everything rests on individual trusts, local councils, and volunteers, with gaps of hundreds of kilometers of unclaimed riverbank between them. If in England hogweed quietly fills the lowlands, in Scotland it went further. It was planted on Victorian Highland estates and spread along the eastern rivers: Tay, Deveron, North Esk, South Esk, Findhorn. In 2018, the Scottish Invasive Species Initiative, SYSI, was established. They chose the strategy they call top-down. First, find the source of infection upstream, begin spraying there, and move slowly down the river kilometer by kilometer. On the River Tay, work began near the village of Dal, close to Aberfeldy. By 2024, SYSI was managing hogweed control across 1,043 kilometers of Scottish rivers. But hogweed doesn't only grow on banks, it sprouts from cliffs. Seeds carried by floodwater become lodged in rock crevices 30 meters above the river. Getting to them on foot is impossible. So SYSI hired contractors called Blokes on Ropes. These are industrial abseiling specialists who descend cliff faces on ropes carrying small bottles of herbicide, working one-handed. In April and May 2026, they spent nearly a week on the cliffs of the North Esk and South Esk in Angus, treating plants on sheer rock faces. Bob Loughton from the Findhorn, Nairn, and Lossy Fisheries Trust described it this way: more adrenaline than a fisheries biologist is used to experiencing, but it's the best way to see a river. On the River Deveron, SYSI found another weapon. In 2019, they launched an experiment. Black-faced sheep were put to graze on infested banks. The pigmentation of their skin protects them from furanocoumarins, and the sheep developed a genuine taste for hogweed. Dan Gordon, landowner of the Macduff Stretch, said 4 years later, "It's remarkable to see the progress. Hogweed was completely dominating the woodland, and dealing with it using pesticides would have been very difficult and expensive." But what does an ordinary day of this war look like? Without ropes and without sheep, just work that nobody sees. In spring, when hogweed puts out its first leaves, volunteers and SYSI staff go out to the rivers with backpack sprayers. They wear protective suits, gloves, masks, goggles. Glyphosate is applied to each leaf individually. The solution is dyed blue so they can see which plants have already been treated and which haven't. Missing even one means letting it flower and shed tens of thousands of seeds into the water. The spraying season runs from late March to early July, then inspection and waiting until the following spring, then everything again. The difficulty lies in how hogweed grows. In the first year, it produces a low rosette of leaves near the ground, easy to miss among grass. In the second year, the leaves grow larger, the plant reaches 1.5 meters, storing energy in the root. Only in the third year does it shoot to full height, 3, 4, sometimes 5 meters, flowers, sheds its seeds, and dies. One plant lives one cycle, but its seeds live for 15 years. This means that even if you destroy every visible plant on a patch, the soil beneath your feet holds a seed bank that will fire new shoots for the next 10 to 15 springs. Emily Isles, Invasive Species Program Coordinator at Tweed Forum, summed up 20 years of work on the River Tweed. "We've significantly reduced the population on the main channel, but each plant can produce between 20,000 and 50,000 seeds, which can lie dormant in the soil for years. So we periodically need specialist help, even for areas considered clean. No final victory, only control, year after year." Britain is not the only patient. This is a pan-European pandemic. In the second half of the 20th century, hogweed established itself in the Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany, Ireland, Denmark, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia. In France, it was introduced in the late 19th century, and now ANSIS, the French Health and Safety Agency, states, "New introductions from the Caucasus are unlikely, but existing populations in France and neighboring countries are a significant source of further spread." The plant no longer needs human help. It spreads on its own. In 2017, the European Commission added Heracleum mantegazzianum to the list of invasive alien species of Union concern under Regulation 1143 of 2014. Importing, keeping, breeding, transporting, selling, or exchanging it is prohibited. Each member state is required to develop a management plan. And on the other side of the Atlantic, in the early 1900s, hogweed was brought to North America, once again as a decorative trophy. One of the first plantings was in the gardens near Highland Park in Rochester, New York. Beekeepers liked it for the size of its flower heads, plenty of food for bees. Now it is recorded in over a dozen American states and listed on the federal noxious weed list. In 2023, 21-year-old Daniel Logan was walking with his brother in Boston Manor Park in West London. A ball went into the bushes near the canal. Daniel went in to retrieve it, a few seconds among the greenery, nothing unusual. The next morning, he got out of bed to go to work and collapsed under his own weight. His ankle had swollen, covered in a red rash, then blisters the size of golf balls. He couldn't walk. Doctors said the scarring may be permanent. Daniel later told the BBC, "I was lucky. I'm 21 and it's just an ankle. But if a small child had fallen in there and it had gone on their face, that would have changed their life forever. If I'd seen even one warning sign, I would never have gone in. I just went to get a ball for my brother. There was no warning in the park." Nadja Kraus, coordinator of the Hogweed Control Program in New York's Department of Environmental Conservation, described the consequences of contact plainly: third-degree burns, fluid-filled blisters, and scarring. In the eyes, blindness. Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea. A plant brought as an ornament for one garden has become a biological occupant on 4 continents. Here is why this war is so hard to win. One hogweed plant produces between 20,000 and 50,000 seeds. Each seed can lie in the soil for up to 15 years, waiting for its chance. If you cut the stem, the taproot regrows within weeks. If you spray the leaves with herbicide, you must return every year, year after year, until the seed bank in the soil is finally exhausted. Miss one season, and all previous years of work can be undone. This is not theory. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic halted volunteer programs across Britain. Alison Baker of the Forth Rivers Trust described the situation. Hogweed seeds survive up to 20 years. They are virtually indestructible. Every year you have to go out and work. If you miss a year, you get a huge number of flowers, each scattering 50,000 seeds downstream. One missed season and 15 years of work cleaning up the River Forth was set back by 2 years. Meanwhile, climate is helping the plant. Kit Gallagher, director of Complete Weed Control in Scotland, spotted young hogweed shoots in East Lothian near Musselburgh in spring 2024, significantly earlier than ever before. His prediction? It will be a record year for hogweed spread. Warmer winters, wetter springs, earlier emergence. The plant is adapting to the new climate faster than people can respond. And there is one more question nobody has resolved. Who pays? In Britain, there is no legal obligation for private landowners to remove hogweed from their land. The law prohibits spreading it, but does not require fighting it. SISI is funded by the state agency NatureScot, but operates through local fishing trusts and volunteers. One council decides to act, its neighbor does not. The plant recognizes no administrative boundaries. Summer 2026. On the North Esk in Scotland, the SISI team has for the first time nearly reached the sea. 8 years of work, from the village of Dal at the top to the coast below. 1,043 kilometers of rivers under management. On the Deveron, the sheep ate hogweed so effectively that landowners who previously refused to participate are now offering their own stretches. On the Tweed, 20 years of spraying have sharply reduced the population on the main channel. Blokes on Ropes this April fully treated Muirden Farm Quarry for the first time, a site 2 previous seasons had failed to finish. This is real progress. It is measured and documented. In England, the scale is different. On the River Tees in northern England, Operation Giant Hogweed ran from 2019 to 2024. a Tees Rivers Trust project applying the same approach as SISI, covering the entire catchment from source to mouth. They gathered survey data, carried out treatment, trained locals, and restored bankside vegetation on cleared sections. In Hertfordshire, volunteers from the Herts and Middlesex Wildlife Trust gained herbicide certification and now treat hogweed on the river's Rib and Lee, where its stands had for years been destroying water vole habitat. But these projects are islands. Between them lie thousands of kilometers of English rivers where nobody is working. At the same time, SISI is expanding to new rivers, the Erne and the Eden, not because the previous ones are clean, but because contamination flows downstream faster than teams can move. Every winter, flood carries seeds to new sections. Soil slips open fresh outbreaks where none existed yesterday. In 2024, on the North Esk and South Esk, new cliff sections had to be treated that appeared precisely because of landslides and floods. Climate is changing the rules. Researchers who modeled future hogweed spread across Europe found that as temperatures rise, the zone of suitable habitat shifts. Warmer winters mean less ground frost. A shorter dormancy period means earlier germination. Kit Gallagher saw the first shoots near Edinburgh in March 2024, weeks ahead of any previous year. His words were, "This will be a massive year for hogweed spread." He was not wrong. And here is the central contradiction that has not gone away in 200 years. In Britain, there is no law obliging a landowner to remove hogweed from their land. The 1981 Act prohibits spreading it but does not require fighting it. One council hires contractors. The neighboring one does not. Volunteers spray one bank of a river while on the opposite bank there is nobody. Seeds do not recognize property boundaries. They fall into the water and float on. In Europe, Regulation 1143/2014 requires every member state to have a plan. Plans exist. So does the hogweed. Here is what we know for certain. This plant will not disappear. Not in a year, not in 10, not in 20. Every missed spring sets back years of effort. Every flood opens a new front. The only thing that works is people going out each spring, year after year, doing the same thing. Finding the plant, spraying or cutting the root, coming back next year, and the next, and the next. 200 years ago, someone wrote Heracleum giganteum in neat handwriting into the Kew Gardens intake register, a small line among hundreds of other seeds. Nobody placed a warning beside it. Nobody could have known. That line has never been crossed out.